Good morning to all the students. In this session, we are going to discuss a topic on electronic mail security. So we know what this electronic mail is, right? So in short form, we'll be calling it as email. Email is nothing but the electronic mail. So we know how to mail some particular information. Why do we use emails?
To transfer message to transfer the data, sir.
To transfer data or to have some communication between two parties, we will be using this email, right? And here we are not going to deal with email. So in email we have two different approaches like PGP and SMIME. That's a different concept, and here we are going to discuss how we are going to secure your email. So what are the threats we have, and what are the measures you are going to take to protect your email, right? So the main purpose of email is, as we know, that it is used to send some data or to communicate some information between two parties or n parties, whatever it may be, right? And the email security, let us call it as a short form. The email security is a term for describing different procedures and techniques for protecting email. Email means it can be the content or something like you protect that email, or you save the confidentiality of the message from the unauthorized users or from the loss. Anything can be the security, right? So simple thing about this electronic mail security is these are different procedures or different techniques that you are going to use to protect the email content or to protect your email accounts. So that is called as email security. So we came to know what email security is. Right. So this email security is nothing but set of procedures or techniques to protect the email accounts. This can be protection of the email accounts or the content of the email also. Anything is possible. Right. So in general, we will be using this email to communicate or to send some information from one end to other end. But there are some unauthorized users, or we can call them as the attackers also. Their main intention is to spread some malware. Have you ever heard of this term malware?
Yes, sir.
What is this malware?
Virus.
Virus is different, Amma. Virus is different. Okay. So malware is something which is installed in your system and that makes your system to malfunction, right? So whatever you intend from the system, whatever you expect from the system is not, you will not get it from the system. So the program will make your system corrupted. So it will make it to malfunction. So that is called as the malware. Clear? Similarly, you might be heard about this term spam. Spam means, what do you mean by spam?
Sir, like unwanted or
Super. This is something like unwanted mails, right? Unwanted content the attackers will be sending to your mail. You don't want that information. For example, some advertisement information about the ICICI bank, whatever it may be. I don't want to stress on a specific bank, right? Like that, you will be getting some unwanted mails from different users which you are not interested. So those mails are called as spam mails. Similarly, phishing. Have you ever heard of this term phishing?
no, sir.
Phishing is something similar to that of spam only. You will get the mails but you are asked to click on some links so that you will get some 100 crores of rupees, or you will be asked to click on some link so that you will get some iPhone for free. So all these things means they are luring the users, so you will be attracted towards those links. So those types are called as phishing. So the attacker, he can send email to spread the malware, or he can send the spam, or he can send mails which makes the phishing attack. So these are all different attacks. These are just an examples we have discussed. These are attacks through email, right? So you will come across these things in daily life also. So I have given these examples, right? So the main purpose of email is to communicate the information or to transfer the information from one end to other end, but that can be used, the email can be used to send the malware, spam and phishing also, right? So what attackers will do is they will send some deceptive messages, right, and they will attract the recipients. Recipients means nothing but the users, like the people like us, right? So they attract the recipients and they can gain the sensitive information, right? So whatever information we are going to send, they can get access to that sensitive information, and they can also send some hyperlinks as we have discussed, and they can install whenever you click on the hyperlink. So the hyperlink appears as if you are getting some iPhone for free, so immediately you will click it. But whenever you click that particular link, hyperlink, the virus will be installed in your computer, or malware will be installed in your computer, right? So you will become a victim for the attackers. So that means the email is giving some doors, is opening some doors for the attackers to attack our sensitive information or to attack our device. Is it clear?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So for example, this is another scenario. This is one scenario we have discussed, how the attacker can attack the system. But in another case, if we have a large enterprise network, for example, let us take the TCS. TCS is a very big organization. It is an MNC which has some thousands of employees together, right? So they have their own network. They won't depend on others. Maybe they depend on internet, but internally when they want to communicate with one employee to another employee, they have their own network, right? So their networks, we can call those networks as enterprise networks. Right. These enterprise networks are very strong. None of the persons from the outside world, they cannot enter into these enterprise networks. So they have very strong security provided for these networks. But so what happens here is the attackers, they cannot enter into these enterprise networks directly. They cannot enter because they have very strong firewalls, they have strong antivirus softwares, anti-malware softwares, everything will be there. So the attackers, they can do nothing. But when the attackers want to enter into the enterprise networks, they can do it by making use of emails. Right. They can send some emails to the employees, and if the employee gets attracted to those type of offers that are sent through the mails, if he clicks on that particular link, the malware will be installed on his computer, through which from that system the attacker can access the entire enterprise network. So if you have gone through the enterprises, in some organizations like these TCS and Infosys, like this, some big organizations, they won't allow the access of other mail accounts. For example, you have Gmail account. You cannot access that Gmail account from the TCS network. You have some Yahoo account, email account. You cannot access Yahoo account or Yahoo email from the TCS network. So they put some restrictions. Why? Because these emails they act as the common entry point. These emails they act as the entry point for the attackers who are trying to gain access to the enterprise network. So these emails are very dangerous, right? So as I have given the example that most of the companies, they won't allow their employees to access other email accounts from their enterprise network. So this is the reason, right? Why? Because the emails acts as the entry point for the attackers to gain access to the enterprise network, so that they can get valuable information from the companies. They can get the company's confidential data. So that is why they put a lot of restrictions on these emails. You may get a doubt, sir, if one employee wants to communicate with another employee, how can they communicate? Means they have their own mail architecture. That means they have their own mail service providers, right? So through that, by making use of those private, or what can we say, proprietary products, right? So TCS will have his own proprietary email software, so by which the employees can communicate with each other. That's a different case. So is it clear up to this scenario? We have seen two different scenarios, how emails can be used to attack the systems or devices, or how they can gain the access for the confidential information. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Right. So these are the two things, but one advantage you have with this email is it does not depend on the operating system of the recipient. For example, you want to send email to your friend, so you doesn't know what operating system he is using, or right? So you can directly send a message or email to your friend. So whatever may be the operating system that the system is running, and whatever may be the communication suite, SUITE, communication suite. Have you ever heard of this term suite? Communication suite. At least tell me suite. Do you know what is this suite? So suite is nothing but a combination of softwares, a collection of softwares. In your system also you have this suite, right? For example, you take this Microsoft Word. This Microsoft Word, Microsoft PowerPoint, everything will be embedded into a common software which is called as MS Suite, right? So it's nothing but a combination of various softwares which are used by the user. That's it. So whatever may be the operating system that the recipient is using, and whatever may be the communication suite, right? What are the protocols that are being used? That's a different case. The email does not bother about the recipient's operating system or the communication suites, right? So this is one advantage we have. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
And one more thing is, this email is the most commonly used network based application. This is network based. Is the email network based application or not? What do you mean by network based application? So these are the applications that depend on networks. Without any network you cannot communicate or you cannot send emails to the others. That is the point you have to understand here. So there are different applications which depend on the network, and most frequently or most important application that completely depends on the network is the email. Right. So have you ever heard of the term distributed environment? What do you mean by distributed environment? What do you understand by this term?
A set of computers are connected together to exchange information and resources, sir.
That is called as a network, right? So distributed environment is something like whatever you told is correct only. So it is a collection of networks where a particular piece of work will be divided among those networks. For example, I have a work task T1 and I have some distributed networks. This is network, this is network, this is network, and this is network. Everything is connected, let us assume, right? So when I want to perform or complete this task 1, I will not load this task 1 entirely into one network. I will divide it into different parts. 4 parts I have divided, and one task T11 will be assigned to this network, and T12 will be assigned to this network, T13 will be assigned to this network, T14. So everything will be done independently, and the final result will be combined to get the original result of the task T1. So this is called as distributed environment. So when you distribute or when you are making use of this distributed environment, the most common network application is the email only. So when this network wants to communicate with this network, or this network wants to communicate with this network, so the most common application that you use for communication is the email only. And as I told that the email, the user is able to send his emails directly or indirectly without any regard to the host operating system, right? It does not bother about the sender's operating system, and it does not bother about the receiver's operating system also. All you want is an email client. So if you have an email client, you can send the mail. You are able to send the mail to any other person who is having the email client, right? So here also the receiver, he should have the email client, then he can send or receive the emails. So the only important point what I want to stress here is the emails communication does not depend on the host operating system or the communication suite. All that you need is a email client that is installed in your system, that is irrespective of operating system and communication suite. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So now we came to know what this email is, why we are going to use this email, what is this email security is, why we require this security, because we have seen 2 different scenarios, how the systems can be attacked by making use of emails, and later we have seen some common introduction part to the emails, right? So with the growing demand of these emails, it is mandatory that without this email the day will not go. This is what is the present situation of the person, right? So when you go across these organizations, software IT industries, you will definitely send at least 4 to 5 mails in a day. This is how important is email in our daily life. You cannot escape your day, or you cannot run your day without sending an email. So this is a very mandatory. And with the growing demand of this email, and with the growing reliance of the email, we are relying on this email. With the growing demand, there is a demand for authentication and confidential services. What do you mean by authentication service? So it is a service.
Verifying the identity of your user, sir.
Service, super, right? It is a service which finds the authenticity of the user or the genuinity of the user. It will check whether the mail has been sent by the correct user, genuine user or not. That is called as authentication. As we have discussed in the earlier class, that authentication can be done either by the username and passwords or by using the biometric devices like the fingerprint scan or the retinal scan. Anything can be used, right? So there are different authentication methods, but in communication we have different scenarios of how we can implement this authentication. That we'll discuss in the next coming sessions. And what about the confidentiality? It is also a security service. Confidentiality means whatever message or whatever information you send via this email should not be disclosed to the unauthorized users. This is what the authentication is. Am I right or not?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So with the growing
Yes, sir.
reliance of this email, it is mandatory that every email client should include this authentication and confidentiality services. So we have two schemes which are very widespread schemes for this implementation of PGP, implementation of authentication and confidentiality. The first scheme is the PGP. PGP stands for Pretty Good Privacy. And the second one is the S-MIME. Right. So this is multiple internet mail extensions that we don't. I think we have it in our syllabus also. This part we are going to discuss. So this is also a very important topic when we know about the email. PGP is a very important concept which you should know. But unfortunately we don't have this in our syllabus, so we are not going to discuss about this. Right. So when time comes, and we will take a session on this S-MIME also. And coming to this PGP, PGP stands for Pretty Good Privacy, and this has been developed by a single person called as Zimmerman. This entire PGP has been implemented by a single scientist who is called as the Zimmerman. And the main purpose of this PGP is, as I told, that it is intended to provide the confidentiality and authentication service that can be used for emails. So the authentication and confidentiality services for the emails can be exclusively provided by this PGP. Clear?
Yes, sir.
So that's all about the introduction to the email security. We have gone through what email is, why we use this email, what actually is the email security, how the attackers can attack the electronic mail system or devices of a particular person by making use of these emails, and what are the important services that you require for any email, like the authentication and confidentiality, and what are the approaches that you have to provide this authentication and confidentiality in the emails is being discussed in the introduction part, right? So this is all about what we have discussed. So as we told, that email security is a term for describing different procedures and techniques for protecting email accounts, content and communication agent unauthorized access or loss or compromise. And email is often used to spread malware, spam and phishing attacks. This also we have discussed. And attackers use deceptive messages to attract or to entice the recipients to part with sensitive information, open attachments or click on hyperlinks that install the malware on victim's device. Everything was discussed. So email is also a common entry point for the attackers who wants to gain a foothold in an enterprise. Similarly, in the distributed networks, electronic mail is the most heavily used network-based application. We have discussed it one. And users expect, and this one is something like, yes, this is correct. Regardless of host operating system or communication suite, one person can send mail to the other persons. Right. So with the increasing growth and the reliance on the email, there is definitely a demand for authentication and confidentiality services. This also we have discussed. And there are two schemes for provide this authentication and confidentiality services. The first one is the PGP and the second one is the SMIME. So PGP stands for Pretty Good Privacy, which was invented by Phil Zimmermann, and this is used to provide the confidentiality and the authentication service for the email and file storage applications. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now this we are entering into another topic which is called as internet mail architecture. So when you are able to send an email, you should know what is the underlying architecture of this email. So this is what we are going to discuss in this particular topic, the internet mail architecture. Before entering into the architecture, you should know one particular term which is called as DKIM. So the DKIM is an acronym that stands for Domain Keys Identified Mail. So DKIM is an acronym that is formed from this Domain Keys Identified Mail. So what is this DKIM stands for? This DKIM, what is this DKIM means? It is a specification. That means it specifies something. It gives some rules. It is a specification for cryptographically signing email messages. So whatever you have, whatever message you have, if you want to send it through the email, that email has to be signed, right? So who has to sign the email? Is it the sender or receiver?
Sender, sir.
Definitely the sender, right? So previously we have different scenarios where the sender will be signing the email, but in this Domain Keys Identified Mail, the concept here is the sender does not sign the email. So he will be giving the duty of signing, he will be giving the responsibility of signing his mail for something, for a domain, right? For, you can call it as a third party. A third party will take the responsibility of signing the emails sent by me or sent by the user. So that is called as Domain Keys Identified Mail. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So Domain Keys Identified Mail is a specification for cryptographically signing email messages, and it is going to permit a signing domain. It is going to permit a signing domain. As I told that you are assigning the role of signing to a third party, which is called a signing domain, and it will take the responsibility for a message in the mail stream, right? So this signing domain will take the responsibility that yes, I am the sender of the email. That responsibility will be taken by this signing email. Is it clear? Simply telling about this DKIM is nothing but it is an agent, we can call it as an agent, which takes the responsibility of cryptographically signing the email messages. Simple thing. Clear?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So once you sign and send your email, the message recipients, who are message recipients? The other part where we can call it as the receiver, right? So the receiver of the message can verify the signature by querying the signer's domain directly, right? So we have the sender here and we have the receiver here. Sender will send an email, and who is going to sign on behalf of sender? It is domain keys, signing domain. So when this email is signed and sent to the receiver, at the receiving end, the receiver has the responsibility of verifying the signature. How it is going to verify the signature means it will again query this domain keys entity, and he will get the public key, and thereby the receiver can confirm that the message was signed by a party who is having the private key for the signing domain, right? Here listen carefully, don't get confused, right? Here we have a domain keys DKIM will be there. So when the sender wants to send an email, he has to sign it. So what he will do is he will ask the DKIM to sign it, and what this DKIM will do is it will sign this email with the private key of this domain key, and once the email has received at the receiver end, the receiver will go and ask this DKIM whether you have sent the mail to me or not. So what this receiver will do is he will get the public key of the DKIM, and he will verify, he will check it with this particular signature. If both are matching, then he can conclude that the email has been received or the email has been sent by a genuine user only. This is what this DKIM works. This is how the DKIM works. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Simple thing. So the sender will ask the DKIM to sign his email, and DKIM will sign the email with the private key, and once the email has received at the receiver end, the receiver will ask the DKIM to provide the public key. So the public key is taken by the receiver, and he will check the authenticity of the email. Simple thing. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Sir.
So have you ever heard of the term RFCs? So you will be hearing this term in the computer networks, right? RFC. So this RFC is nothing but recommended for corrections. Right. So in computer networks, this particular terminology is very important. Recommended for corrections. So what is this RFC stands for means? For example, you have a good idea of implementing a new protocol. You want to implement a new communication protocol and you have developed it. Let us say you have developed a new communication protocol, but in order to accept that communication protocol by the entire world, you cannot individually do it, right? So you have to approach a standards organization. That standard organization, what it will do is, it will ask you to write the documentation. This is in general terms, this is not actually what happens, right? So the standard organization, what it will do is, it will ask you to provide the documentation for our new communication protocol. You have written a good documentation for the new communication protocol, and what this particular standards organization will do is, they will put that documentation available to the public, and they will ask the public to send some recommendations or to verify the authenticity or to verify whether this communication protocol is actually working correctly or not. So it is public. So anybody in the world, they can access this document and they can work on it. Clear? So that particular documentation which is kept open for the public for the recommendations, we call it as the RFC. That's why it is called as recommended for corrections. So it is kept public and public can access it and they can suggest or they can recommend the corrections, right? So every protocol you take in the computer networks or in the wireless networks or in any wireless sensor networks, anything IoT, anywhere you take, you will come across this term RFC. So any communication protocol, anything you want to develop or you want to release it to the market or you want to release it to the public, that should be through standards organization only, and they will make the documentation available to the public. That is called as RFC. So RFCs along with some number, for example 2130, like that, like 4871, 2457, like this, they will give some number, right? So this particular DKIM is also a specification which is defined in RFC 4871. If you go and browse your internet requesting the Google to query this RFC 4871, so you will get the documentation related to internet DKIM. You will get the document related to DKIM. You can read that document and you can get lot of knowledge also. That's a different case. Is it clear about these RFCs?
Yes, sir.
So DKIM is a proposed internet standard which is defined inside this RFC 4871, right? And this has been widely used by many of the government agencies. This DKIM is accepted by many of the government agencies, and it was accepted by Gmail also, very familiar mail provider, and it is accepted by Yahoo and many of the ISPs. What do you mean by ISP? Have you ever heard of this term ISP?
Internet Security Protocol.
No, it's not Internet Security Protocol. It is Internet Service Provider. What do you understand by the term Internet Service Provider?
The person who, it's providing services to communicate over the internet, sir.
No. It is a person or an organization which provides the internet services. It provides the internet
Like
services.
BSNL?
For example, you take BSNL. BSNL will be providing the internet services to the people. So we can call this BSNL as ISP. Jio, Reliance Jio, is it providing the internet services to the people or not?
sir. It is
Yes,
provided.
we can
Yes,
call
sir.
it as ISP. Airtel. Is it providing the service or not? Internet service.
Yes, sir.
Yes, right. So this is called as the ISP. Similarly, there are lot of local ISP providers like City Online. Like that, there are a lot of internet service providers, right? So this DKIM, which is an internet standard defined inside this RFC 4871, is a worldwide accepted standard by many of the government agencies, Gmail, Yahoo, and many of the ISPs. This is the importance of DKIM. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Right. So this is what we have discussed here. So DKIM is an internet standard specified inside this RFC 4871, and DKIM is a specification for cryptographically signing email messages, and it makes signing domain to claim the responsibility for a message in the mail stream. Recipient can verify the signature by querying the signer's domain directly to retrieve the appropriate public key. And it is a widely adopted standard by number of government agencies, corporations, Gmail, Yahoo, and many ISPs. So this is all about the introduction part. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So now we are entering into the actual topic, which is the internet email architecture. So the internet email architecture consists of, basically it consists of two worlds. Two worlds. It's just for understanding purpose, right? So one world we will call it as the transfer world, and the second world we call it as the user world. So basically this internet email architecture at the fundamental level, we are dividing this architecture into two different worlds. The first world we call it as the user world, and the second world we call it as the transfer world. So in the user world, you will have entities like message user agents. So the short form is very important. MUA. MUA stands for message user agents. And the second world, which is the transfer world, consists of one entire entity, one large entity, which is called as MHS. MHS stands for message handling service. This message handling service consists of number of more than two message transfer agents, which in short form we will call it as MTAs. Clear? So the architecture is very simple. It consists of only two worlds. The user world consists of MUA, which is message user agents, and the transfer world consists of MHS. Within MHS we have lot of MTAs. MHS stands for message handling service, and MTS stands for message transfer agents. Agents are nothing but we can assume them as the tools. We can assume them as a tools, right? Let us see how this architecture looks like. This one is the internet architecture, mail architecture. It's not internet architecture, it is internet mail architecture, right? So you can see this dotted line. It's a box, right? So this entire thing is called as the transfer world, and the down part from here to here, this entire thing, this is called the user world. As we have discussed that the user world consists of message user agents at the sender side and at the receiver side. That's it. It also may consist of the message store. Actually this message store is to store the messages. what we can do is we can combine this message user agent and message store into a single entity, and you can call it as a MUA. That's a different case, right? Here he has defined it in a separate entities, but you can combine it. So the user world consists of message user agents, and the transfer world consists of message handling system, which again consists of a sequence of MTAs, message transfer agents. In addition to this MTAs, we also have the mail submission agent and mail delivery agent. It's a terminology, very simple terminology. You can simply understand or you can remember these terms, right? So here the sender will be submitting the mail. So in order to handle the messages that is sent by the sender, it will check whether it is in the correct email format or not. It will check whether the destination email address is correct or not. Every checking will be done at this MSA, which is called as mail submission agent. So it performs the checking operation. Once everything is satisfied, that mail will be transferred to the mail transfer agent, and from this mail transfer agent to another mail transfer agent, and from this MTA to another MTA. So since this is done at this MSA is at the sending side, it is named as the mail submission agent. And once from this MTA you receive the email, it will be handed over to the mail delivery agent. The mail delivery agent's responsibility is similar to that of MSA only. It will check for the validity of the message. It will check whether it is in the correct format or not. When it is satisfied, it will be sent to this message store. And if it is good, everything is right, it will simply give it to the message user agent. So this message user agent is nothing but a tool which is used by the user. For example, if I want to send an email to my friend, I will be opening the Gmail account, right? mail.google.com. So you will be getting an interface. That interface is nothing but mail user agent. By using that mail user agent, you will format or you will write some message, and you will add the destination address, you will add the subject line, you will put your signature, and everything will be done. So the tool that is used by the user to access the mail or to view the mail or to write the mail is called as the message user agent. Clear?
Yes, sir.
So this message user agent works on behalf of the user actors. So on behalf of yourself, the message MUA is going to format the things, right? Or it is going to add the destination address, or it is going to add the subject. Everything is done. So you can assume it as a tool which is being used by the user to view the contents of the email or to write the contents. Anything can be done by making use of this tool or program, anything you can say. Clear?
Yes, sir.
So where this MUA will be residing? It will be residing in the device that is used by the user. That's it. Am I right or not? So this is
sir.
also called as the email client. This also we have come across this term. So you will be having an email client. For example, I told that the Gmail client, Yahoo client will be installed in your computer, and that will be useful for the user to write a mail, to write the destination address. Anything you can do it by making use of these email clients. Clear? So the other means the sender, message user agent, formats a message and performs the initial submission into the MHS, right? So once you have written the mail, you will be sending it to the transfer world, that is the MHS. This entire dotted box is called as MHS. So you will be transferring it to the transfer world, that is the MHS, and you will be submitting it to the mail submission agent. Clear? Similarly, we have one MUA at the receiver end. What this will do is, it will simply receive the message from the message store and it will just display it to the user, so that the user can see the contents, whatever is received in the email. So this is all about the MUAs. And the second entity which we are going to discuss is the mail submission agent. As I told that the mail submission agent accepts the message submitted by an MUA at the sender side, and it will check the policies and it will enforce the policies of the hosting domain. So whatever policies you are defining for this email, it will check whether those policies are being implemented or not, whether those policies are followed or not, right? So that is the responsibility of mail submission agent. As I told that it is just used as a checking agent. It will check whether everything is done in the correct format or not. It will check whether the policies of the hosting domain has been enforced or not, right? So as I told that this message user agent and MSA can be combined into a single unit. No problem when you combine it into a single unit also, so that both of them resides in the hosting device only. But sometimes you may have this type of architecture also, where MUA is only kept at the device and MSA will be kept at the MHS side. In this case, the MUA and MSA communication will be done by making use of the SMTP protocol. SMTP stands for Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. Clear? And when we are done with this message submission agent, and assume that the message submission agent has checked everything and everything is according to the policies only, so it will directly transfer it to the MTA by using the same SMTP protocol. And what about this MTA means? We can call these MTAs as relaying agents. What do you mean by relaying agents? Have you ever heard of the term relay run? Running is different from the relay run. So relay run means, for example, there is 400 meters of runway to be covered. So the first person will start here, and after 100 meters he will handle a paper to this second player, and the second player, he will start his running, and after that he will hand over this paper to this person, and again from here to here, right? Like this is called as the relay run. Similarly, these message transfer agents, they will make use of the relays. So whatever message that is transferred by the MSA, it will be transferred to another mail transfer agent, and from this mail transfer agent another mail transfer agent. Like that it will reach the message or mail delivery agent. So we can simply say that they act as the relaying agents by a sequence of MTAs. And the final next one we want to discuss is, this is third one, and the fourth entity we are going to discuss is MDA. MDA stands for Mail Delivery Agent, and it is responsible for transferring the message from the MHS to the MS. Right, from here to here. Message store. MS stands for message store. And the next entity is the message store, where this is going to handle, or this is going to store the mails on a long term relationship, right? So it is going to store the messages whatever it has received, it is going to store the mails. And this MS can either be in the local system or it can be in the remote system also, somewhere far away from the local device. So it can be maintained as a local system or a remote system, but once you have this mail server, what it will do is it will store the mails here, and whenever the MUA wants to access it, he can directly access it from the message store by making use of IMAP, POP, post office protocol. These are the different protocols, right? By making use of these protocols, the message user agent at the receiver is going to access this message store. So this is all about the internet mail architecture. So the internet mail architecture consists of two worlds, that is the user world and transfer world. User world consists of message user agents, and the transfer world consists of message handling system and MTS, along with the mail submission agent and mail delivery agent. So this is all about the internet mail architecture. In today's session, we have gone through the introduction part of the internet mail security, and the second topic which was discussed is the internet mail architecture. So that's all for today's session. Thank you one and all, and thank you once again for joining the session.